Bill D. Simone. Spring 1976. I'd been weight training for a couple of years, mainly under the guidance of Coach Fred McLean in the high school weight room. Thanks, Coach. Look what you started. Away from Coach, the easiest source of information was the magazines. No internet, no certifications, not much in bookstores or libraries on weight training, no video, no health club chains. But even then, we thought of the magazines as more motivation than practical advice. I wasn't moving to California to bomb and blitz for hours a day. Until this magazine right here. This one article grabbed me, and for a few years at least, made me hunt and study anything with this guy's name near it. Because what this guy was saying at the time was something I could see doing, whether it turned me into Mr. America or not. Written by Gene Mosé from Joe Weider's Muscle Builder and Power, dated April 1976. Coverman Mike Mentzer on Contraction Control Training. One of America's fastest rising stars believes in training every muscle to failure, not fatigue. It's the Weider Force Rep system with a vengeance. In one of the most startling training concepts to appear in years, Mike Mentzer challenges the high-set system used by the superstars today. With intense concentration and controlled movements, he proves you can cut workout time drastically. Most bodybuilders don't know how to train, claims Mike. In the following interview, he describes the system that made full use of the Weider reverse gravity and force reps principles of training. He trains to failure instead of fatigue on exercises in a way that preserves enthusiasm and ensures progress. 1.5 hour workouts 3 times a week may be the contest training of the future, says Big Mike. Gene, your arm looks really thick from all angles, Mike. What does it measure and how many times a week do you train it? Mike, it measures 19.25 inch cold. I work it 3 times a week. I work all body parts 3 times a week. That frequency tends to keep my metabolism and enthusiasm up. Gene, how do you schedule your training? What body parts do you work with your arms? Mike, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I work biceps and triceps together right after deltoid. Gene, that combination could work well for you because you are naturally wide. Narrow guys have to work delts and arms together. 2/3 of the shoulder girdle is the scapula. When you work the deltoids first, the ligaments are warmed up fully so that when you do the lat exercises, the stretching action helps build shoulder width. Narrow guys should work delts and lats together and chest and arms together. Arnold and Larry Scott both work delts and arms together, and neither of them display great width. How long does your deltoid workout take, Mike? How many sets do you do? I've never timed it, but I do only 5 sets. Gene, 5 sets, that's all? Mike, I work them very hard, though. I use the negative resistance principle. I work with a training partner. After I push a weight up, I will have my partner apply hand pressure downward on the weight so that I am working against resistance through the entire lowering movement. When I begin to weaken and pushing up after a few reps, then my partner does the reverse and applies upward pressure. The process becomes a combination negative resistance forced reps exercise. There are no dead spots in any movement. I am working against maximum resistance both going and returning. When I finish a set, I can hardly raise my arms by themselves. After a brief rest, I'm ready to go again. Gene, how many total sets do you do for arms? Mike, 5 sets, 5 for triceps, 5 for biceps. Gene, it's hard to believe. You have great arms. You work arms following deltoids. Guys with exceptional arms usually have developed their own unique way of training them. What are the details of such a low-set arm program? Mike, I start out with preacher bench curls, using a fairly wide grip with my elbows in tight, palms out. I pick a weight I can do 8 to 10 reps with and work to failure. I use the straight side of the bench and lean over it. I get full lower and peak biceps work. I do 3 sets, resting just long enough between sets to permit an effort equal to the original set. After that, I go to seated concentration curls. I hold my elbow against the inside thigh and supinate the hand at the peak of the flexion. I keep my eye on the muscle as I curl, and when it begins to ball up, then I supinate. I hold the peak position for 2 seconds and follow this with controlled lowering. I make full use of the downward force by resisting it all the way to the starting position. Again, I don't waste return movements. I do 2 sets, 8 to 10 reps, and go to failure. Gene, what else do you do for your biceps? Mike, that's it. Gene, 5 sets, triple question mark? Mike, sometimes less. I can get pumped on 1 set, really. My arms are dead after 5 sets. Why do more? The muscle has had it. Gene, you don't believe in 15 or 20 sets per body part? Mike, I used to do 25 sets for biceps. I responded on high sets, but I'm also responding on low sets. So why waste time and energy? Gene, what about your triceps? What exercises? Mike, the same sort of thing. I start out with triceps pushdowns on the vertical pulley with a bar, very close grip, very strict. I push down and as close to the body as possible. Straightening the elbow gets the outer head, while pushing down gets the inner head. I do 2 or 3 sets, 8 to 10 reps. I follow these with parallel dips. I dip deep as far as I can go without tearing out my shoulders. I do 2 sets. Gene, this is the arm routine you now use. How much of your present arm development do you attribute to this routine? Did you have your arms up to 19 before you went on this routine? Mike, the biggest I had them before was 18 3/4, but I was 5 pounds heavier. Now I weigh 199 with 19 1/4 and more muscular. Gene, would you recommend this kind of training for a person just getting started with perhaps a year of training or less? Mike, I think it's ideal. Without the proper metabolism and enthusiasm, I think 15 or 20 sets would tear down his motivation. 5 sets would be better. Gene, does this mean you have reformed your training philosophy? Mike, if I can get what I want with 5 sets, why not? I save time and energy. Gene, how long is your workout on the delt arm day? Mike, about 1.5 hours. Gene, how can it take so long to do so few sets? Mike, that's my entire body workout. Gene, how is that? Don't you work out every day? Mike, no, only 3 times a week. Gene, Mike, it sounds like we're getting a snow job. In what sequence do you train your body parts then? Mike, I start with the biggest body parts first and work down to the smallest. Legs, back, chest, delts, arms, and abdominals. Gene, do you step up your training before a show? Mike, no, definition is a matter of diet. I alter my diet, I still keep my training heavy. Mike's 19-inch plus arms and broad beam shoulders, packed with thick set slabs of raw muscle density, are trademarks of his Herculean back development. Grainy textures of brutal striated vascularity and steel-etched muscle mass are the end result of specialized Weider training techniques. Training partner Dave Mastarakis assists Mike with some forced reps, allowing him to work every muscle to the limit. Gene, on this type of program, do you feel that the days of rest between workouts makes it work? Mike, yes, along with regular sleep, 6.5 to 8 hours. Gene, if a fellow wants to go on a specialization program to put an inch on his arms, how would this system work for him when he barely gets a pump in 5 sets? Mike, the way I do them, I can get a pump in 1 set. I work until the weight falls out of my hand. Gene, Bob Birdsong works like that, but he uses light weights. Mike, that's relative. I use as much weight as I can for the required number of reps, working to failure each set. On the concentration curl, I use about 45 pounds, and on the preacher curl, 120. I follow the Weider peak isolation principle, doing everything strict and peaking. However, I'll follow the Weider forced rep system on the last rep or two, either by myself or with partner assistance. Do you believe in the supersets principle? Yes, I use it for periods of time, even with my system. I don't let my body get used to any single system. I prefer to jolt it out of any lazy habits. Gene, you can't do too many sets per body part when you work your whole body in one day. What point would you stress for getting the most out of this program? Mike, complete extension and contraction with each movement, working the muscle through its complete range of motion and going to failure. Gene, the idea of 5 sets of body part 3 times a week is not new. A lot of fellows have started out that way, but as soon as they began to make gains, They increased the number of sets until they got to the point where they were overtrained. Mike: I did the same thing. As my progress slowed, I advanced the number of sets until progress stopped altogether. We all get stuck with that psychology. If a little is good, more is better. How wrong. Now that I'm back to 3 days a week, I'm gaining like crazy. Gene: do you train breathless or do you wait for your oxygen to return to normal after a set? Mike: I wait for recovery before I go on to the next set. I can't do well if I hustle it. When you're in good shape, you recover quickly. Gene: do you think a fellow at the intermediate stage of training can benefit from the Weider forced reps principle? Mike: yes. Gene: what do you think of the tendency of some top guys to do 30 or 40 sets per body part? Mike: I don't think they'll gain. Next year, I'll look as good as Arnold. Next month, Mike tells us how he uses contraction control training for his other body sections. The label contraction control didn't stick. The next series of articles from Weider had the label failsafe. So failsafe arms, failsafe chests, etc. Then they tried Iron Mike for a few, until finally Heavy Duty became the Mentzer brand. Prior to this article, the only place I had seen Mentzer without knowing it was this picture used in various Arthur Jones articles in Scholastic Coach and Athletic Journal, and eventually in Ellington Darden's Nautilus books. By way of contrast, here's another training article from the same magazine. Leg blasting for size, definition, and shape. Danny tells it all to Joe Weider, the muscle builder since 1936. Padilla's legs are dynamite. Arnold envies them, and Denny Gable lost the Mr. USA contest because of them. This exclusive interview reveals Danny's training secrets. Joe: first of all, I'd like to skirt around a few generalized issues and then later on get onto your present leg program. Dan: that should give me time to relax and mull over the entire spectrum of leg training as I see it. Joe: I wasn't the only one who thought your terrific leg development was a contributing factor in your resounding conquest at the Mr. USA show. Dan: thanks for the compliment, but it's always been a contention of mine that the only way to the top in bodybuilding was to have a well-balanced physique, and my workout regimen has always included strenuous leg training segments. Joe: besides the enormous mass of your sensational legs, you have exceptional shape and startling cuts. Those strenuous leg workouts must include a large variety of exercises and the extensive use of the many different leg specialty machines in the gym. Dan: yes, the machines do take a pounding from me, but my most important exercise is the squat. Besides the benefits of this exercise building thigh muscle mass, there are rewards to be reaped from it from stimulating my entire metabolism. Joe: some people are under the mistaken impression that a short man such as yourself has an advantage in leverage and muscle groupings which is compatible for heavy leg work. Dan: size and structure have nothing to do with it. Those thinking this are ill-informed, or they're trying to rationalize a case for themselves and shirking their own requirements for rigorous leg workouts. Joe: when you began training, were your legs above average in size or muscularity? Dan: how can anyone's legs be above average at a body weight of 122 pounds? I weighed in at that for my first workout. Hard and diligent training got me up to as much as 177, but for the Mr. Universe, my hopes are for a more chiseled weight of 165. Joe: naturally, your preparation for the upcoming event entails a change from your normal exercise schedule. What's your difference now? Dan: through your generosity, I'm able to absorb the invigorating stimulus of working out in the electrifying atmosphere of Gold's fabulous establishment. Denny Gable and Robbie Robinson are my temporary workout partners, and they're so down to business when we're wrapping out sets. Some kind of invisible protective shell envelops our little group, and outside noises and influences can't break into our concentration and exercise dynamics. Those two guys and some of the other greats around here have been introducing me to some of the Weider training principles that I previously didn't have time to practice back home. Joe: we'll discuss these principles in a few minutes, but for right now, I'd like to explore ideas on the type of gym which best suits you for exercising. Your last statement seemed to imply a preference for a facility such as this one. Are there advantages inherent in the larger gymnasiums, or do you think that ones that are smaller and with fewer clients and having equipment within closer reach is better? Dan: I didn't mean to imply anything as far as preferring one center over another. I can feel at home in most any gym as long as it has proper equipment and the participants are decent. Joe, do the guys work out faster out here than they do back in Rochester? Dan, the tempo is about the same on either coast, although at the moment our workouts are very hectic. This is probably due to our use of the Weider double split routines. It's terrific, and I'm making noticeable gains in a relatively short time span. Back home, I have to work such long hours on my job, there isn't enough time available to train early and late, so that rules out the double split principle. Joe, in any case, what do you think of it now that you're doing it? Dan, it's positively dynamite, and I like it because of the change of pace, and also I have more energy to blast the legs. Joe, do I detect something adventurous in your voice? Dan, to be a success in most anything, innovation has to play a role in any efforts towards success. Maybe that's why you're such a success. In bodybuilding, the greats are always searching for new routes for those extra ounces of muscle, which makes the difference between their bodies and those of the also-rans. Joe, in other words, you don't believe in stagnate ideas. Dan, exactly. Over a period of months, besides the workouts having to be made harder and more of a challenge to accomplish, they must also be, in a sense, creative experiences. That's why many of the Weider principles are important to me. It helps make progress by advancing from principle to principle without getting stale or burned out in my efforts for harder workouts with heavier weights. Joe, you mentioned earlier the long hours you have to put in on your job. How much rest and sleep do you require to recuperate from your vigorous exercise programs and those job activities? Dan, I try to hit the sack by midnight and get in at least 7.5 to 8 hours sleep each night. I can grow if I accomplish that. Joe, I take it your workouts are in the evening under normal conditions. How have you tailored your eating habits to get the proper amount of nutrition in a very busy life schedule? Breakfast is usually about 9:30, lunch near 1 in the afternoon, and about 2 hours later I have another light snack. After my evening 2 to 2.5 hours stint at the gym, I'll have a good-sized meal at home. Does your late supper include carbohydrates? Dan, no carbos after 8 at night. How long have you used a 2-day-a-week leg program? From the beginning, I've worked my legs in this manner. I start out with squats, but before getting into anything involving heavy weights, I do 2 warm-up sets with 135 for 15 reps. Then I follow this with 4 sets of heavy reps. The first heavy set is 15 reps with 275, and I jump to 350 for a set of about 10 or 12. If it's a heavy day, I'll include a set of 8 reps with either 415 or 425. The most I've ever done is 530 pounds for 3 reps. How much rest do you take between sets? Whatever is comfortable, and this varies between a minute or a minute and a half. Joe, what manner do you do the squats, and do you use any safety equipment like a lifting belt? Dan, there's always a lifting belt strapped around me during my squat routine, and besides the safety factor, it aids in my attempt at doing an absolutely strict style squat. Shoes are a must for me also, and my heels are always elevated, and I space them about 12 inches apart with my toes pointed straight ahead. My back is kept straight as possible, and as I concentrate on my thighs, I focus my vision on some spot on the wall about normal eye level. Doing all of this makes the thigh muscles absorb about 90% of the action. As you stated before, the squats are for overall thigh growth. What's the next exercise, and what is it intended for? I follow the squats with leg presses. They're done for the reason of shaping the outer thigh muscles. Joe, is foot placement crucial to you in this movement? Yes, I use the same placement method as above. Joe, run down the important points and poundages. I start with 350 and wrap out 12 reps with it. I progress on up until I reach 500 or 550 for a set of 12. In all, there's a total of 5 sets done. Leg extensions are next. Is there any particular way in which you tense or hold the thighs for momentary contractions, or do you just crank them out? A board is put under the lower part of my thighs in order to take advantage of the Weider peak contraction principle. I force each repetition out and tense at each peak of extension. 5 sets with 150 pounds and 15 reps is the usual thing, and as little rest as possible between sets really builds cuts and nice shape. Joe, don't your legs start feeling slightly tired and pumped at this juncture? Dan, A wee bit. Seriously, the 15 reps in each set really infuses an intense burning sensation, and I know the peak contraction principle is doing its job. Joe, do you exercise the adductor muscles on the inside of the thighs? Continued on page 68. Okay, page 68. Okay, on the way to page 68. Hey, oh, look, another ad. Oh, look, another ad. Oh, wait, there's a power twister and a metal girdle. Oh, look, more power twisters and more girdles. Okay, here we are. What was the question again? Oh, wait, adductors. Dan. Yes, and my favorite one for these muscles is hack squats. My feet are kept close together and 5 sets of 10 to 12 reps are done. What follows this? 5 light sets of leg curls. What do you mean by light sets? Also, do you do these flat on the bench or do you cheat? Dan, the weight is in the 100-pound range and I really concentrate on the leg biceps while I lie flat and curl up as many as possible. Joe, can you go faster on the leg biceps because it's not a very heavy movement? Dan, right. Do you like the Weider quality training principle where the most amount of work is done in the shortest amount of time? Dan, it depends on how I feel and what my training time and training goals are. The quality principle, almost no pause between sets, is great for leg definition, and I use it before contests. In my opinion, this technique is superior to running if the intent is to strive for leg defo. Moments ago, you touched on the subject of running. Amplify your thoughts on the subject. Dan, a few weeks before a contest, a mile run about once or twice each week would help speed up the metabolism and probably burn off some excess fat which could have accumulated. However, running on a regular basis while training on a normal workout schedule could cause overtraining. The rest of the article touches on calf training, which Padilla is quoted as saying to do after your upper leg training and for 22 sets twice a week. And then in the same issue, they had contest results. So while the rest of the magazine was glossy, the ads are in color, the article's in black and white, the contest results were printed on a coarse green or yellow paper and inserted into the middle of the magazine. So on the left top, you see Padilla winning the USA. The lower right, you see Mentzer in second place in his height category at the same contest. Now, the Padilla article, or the article featuring Padilla's name and images, was the typical training article, and that's why the Mentzer article popped for me. 25 sets on a muscle versus 5. So for me, about to start college and adult life, the 5 was a lot more appealing. And the Mentzer article was so much more direct as to what I wanted to learn compared to all the cliches and conversation in the Padilla article. Remember the last line of the Mentzer article? Next year I'll look as good as Arnold. That was 1976. And Arnold didn't compete between 1976 and 1979. This picture, which is from the 1990 book from the late George Butler, is Arnold training for the 1980 Olympia. And I refer you to others like John Little for the story behind that. But if you look at the top of the mirror, to the right of Arnold's head and just above his reflection, Mentzer is coming. Is this how to do it, Joe? Sorry, I'm impressionable. But speaking of John Little, he wrote the foreword to the Shoulder and Arm Kindle. Much appreciated, John. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. More of these to come, including another Joe Weider Nautilus analysis, this time with Bill Pearl, a run of the early Mike Mentzer training articles, starting with the 3 More Reps chapter by Rick Wayne and the Failsafe run, and part 3 of my look at long length partials. Please use the buttons on the screen to subscribe and find more videos on the channel. Happy and healthy training.